Okay, sorry about that. All right, so we have a test on, it's Tuesday, so y'all's test is on Thursday. So we're gonna run through a little bit of the front page. We'll do a little bit of the back, then we'll take a little break. Y'all will do some on your own, then we'll come back and cover the last little section. Okay, so on the first page, you have some F plus, F minus. Notice that some of them have numbers plugged in, and then some of them have just X's, okay? So let's run through a couple of those. Let's do letter D. Okay, I have F minus G of -3. Remember that that means that I'm going to take the -3 and I'm going to push it into both F and G. So I want F of -3 minus G of -3. Okay, then remember the way that you're going to find F of -3 and G of -3 is to take that number and plug it into the formula for that letter. So for example, my F formula, if you look up here, is X plus 6. And my G is X plus 1. So what I'm going to do is, in my calculator, as soon as I see where the X is, I'm going to put a -3 in that spot. Let's start with F. What's F's formula? X plus 6, now it's -3 plus 6. Okay, and I get 3. Okay, let's put that right here. 3 minus. Okay, next I want G of -3. Well, then I'm going to go to G's formula and plug in a -3 where I have an X. What's my G formula? Okay, make sure this is wrong. Okay, if you are plugging a negative into an exponent, you have to use parentheses. So -8 is not the correct answer. You want this. -3 squared plus 1, 10 is the correct answer. Okay, so make sure that when you plug in, if it's a negative, you want to group it in parentheses first. Okay, then I want 10 take away from 3. What is 3 minus 10? Final answer is -7. Very good. Okay, let's go to letter D. I want G over F. I'm going to push the 1 into both of those. So it's G of 1 divide F of 1. And then remember, how do I find G of 1 and F of 1? I take the number 1, I plug it into X for the appropriate formula. So I'm just going to do this in my calculator. My G formula is X squared plus 1. Now it's 1 squared plus 1, and I get 2. Now will you plug it into the F formula? Yeah, I'll give you a sec to do that. My F formula is X plus 6. Now it's 1 plus 6, which is 7. So 2 divided by 7. Okay, now let's talk about what if you have the little circle. This is not a multiply, this is a composition. Okay, so remember that if you get a composition, you're going to exchange that little circle for double parentheses. You're going to find G of F of 2. And remember, we're going to start with the equation closest to the 2. So we're going to find F of 2. Okay, and I just showed you how to do that. Remember, you're going to plug in 2 to the equation for F. What is F's equation?
X plus 6.
Now it's 2 plus 6. What do I get? That's going to give me 8. And then once I get the 8, I'm going to take that number and plug it in to G's formula. So remember, composition is kind of like a little chain reaction. You plug the 2 into the F, we got an 8. Now we're going to take 8 and plug it into G. G's equation is X squared plus 1. Now it's 8 squared plus 1, which gives me how many? 65 is correct. Okay, I would make sure that when you do your test, check your mental math. You have a calculator for a reason. Maybe do it in your head, but just double check that you don't get stuff wrong for silly reasons. Okay, take a look at number 3. I have 2 new equations. My G is 2x squared plus, my F is 2x squared plus 4. My G is x minus 6. Okay, if you keep an x in the parentheses, instead of plugging in numbers, you're just going to use the formulas. So let's do A first. I want F composition G. That means F of G of X. And then remember that what that means, I'm gonna write a little sentence for this in a second, is that I'm gonna take the G of X formula and I'm gonna sub it into the F formula. So let's write that first, okay, then we'll do it. Okay, I'm gonna put or plug the G of X formula into the F formula. So what was my F formula? Just read it to me. What's my F formula? 2x squared plus 4, then I'm gonna do 2 blank squared plus 4. And then inside the blank, I'm gonna put G into that spot. So I'm taking the G formula and I'm subbing it into F's formula. So if it was 2x squared plus 4, it's 2 blank squared plus 4. And then I'm gonna put an x minus 6 here. Now, what also should I put on that? Parentheses is correct. Okay, then we talked about anytime you have a squared, you're gonna write that term twice. So this is gonna be x minus 6 times x minus 6 again. Okay, let's do our FOIL or the arrows, however you want to do it is fine. What's x times x?
X squared.
X squared. Okay, then I have x times minus 6. That'd be a minus 6x. Then I'm going to do this negative 6 times x is another negative 6x. And then negative 6 times negative 6, use your calculator if you don't remember. Plus 36. Okay, then I also have behind that a plus 4, and what was in front of that? A times 2. So let's keep all those pieces here. I have a plus 4 in the back, and I have a times 2 in the front. Now, notice that my 2 only applies to this part, right? I'm not going to times the 4 by 2 as well. So you have 2 options here. I'm going to combine like terms and then double them. So does x squared have anything else it can go with? No, times it by 2, what would it be? 2x squared. Okay, let's add your 6 x's together. I have a minus 6 and another minus 6. How many is that together? Add it in your calculator. Negative 12, but then I'm going to times it by what? 2. So now it's a negative 24x. Okay, and then for my last number, I have a plus 36. Okay, are there any other numbers in the parentheses I can combine it with right now? No, but 36 times 2 is 72. And then what am I going to add behind that? The plus 4. So 2 times 36 is really 72. Add 4 more to that. What are we going to get?
76.
76. Okay. Now let's go the other way. So instead of Christian, are we ready? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So now it's G of F. So I'm just going to reverse the order. So instead of doing F parentheses G, now it's G parentheses F. And remember, here's what that means. I want to put my F formula into the middle of my G formula. Can you read me my G formula? What does it say? Now it's going to be, instead of x minus 6, blank minus 6. And then what am I going to put into the blank? The formula for F. And what was F's formula? Okay, very good. Now, if there's something in front of the blank, you have to use parentheses. Okay, but is there anything in the front here? Then I'm not going to bother to put parentheses. Okay, from there, any like terms? Okay, the 4 and the minus 6. Combine those. How much is 4 plus negative 6? Very good. So it'd be 2x squared minus 2. Okay, also make sure that when you're adding in the calculator, Sometimes y'all will do 4 minus -6. There aren't two negatives. You're just gonna do plus and then a -6, okay? Any questions on that? All right, go ahead and turn the page. Okay, number 4 is very similar to the one that we just did. So now let's move on to long division. Okay, take a look at the next example, 5. Okay, there are 2 types of division that we learned. Okay, long division and synthetic. And I think I actually want to do long division first, and then we'll come back to synthetic. So take a look at 6A. I want 4x squared minus 6x plus 1, and I want to divide it by 2x minus 1. Okay, first question. What would I have to times 2x by to perfectly match a 4x squared? 2x is very good. Put it on the top. And then remember, you're going to do 2x times 2x. That gives me 4x squared. Then you're going to do 2x times the minus 1. What's 2x times minus 1? Okay, negative 2x. But then, remember, we're going to switch the signs on that whole row, which means this one's going to go minus, that one's going to go plus. What happens to 4 minus 4 in the front? Okay, remember, those should always cancel out or you pick something wrong. So 4 minus 4 crosses out. What is negative 6 plus 2? Negative 4x, then carry down the plus 1. Then you repeat the process. You're going to ask yourself, what would I have to times a 2x by to perfectly match a negative 4x? Negative 2. Why don't I need an x? Yeah, because I already have an x here and I'm not wanting to turn it into a squared, right? Negative 2 times 2x is a negative 4x. Negative 2 times negative 1 is a positive 2, but then when I change the signs on that row, my first negative 4 goes plus, this one goes minus. Okay, and a lot of y'all were just writing the opposite sign here. That's totally fine. However, it makes most sense to you. These are going to cross out because it's a plus and a minus 4. That should always happen. And then in your calculator, what is 1 plus negative 2? Negative 1. That's called your what? Starts with an R.
Remainder.
Remainder, very good. So then for your final answer on your test, you would put 2x minus 2 plus a remainder of negative 1 over 2x minus 1. Okay? 2x minus 2 plus a remainder of negative 1 over what you divided by. Okay? Now, take a look at letter B. Do you have to work this one out the long way? No. Okay, no, but I would like for you to work it out the long way and then check it with the shortcut to make sure that you got it right. Okay? Now, quick question. Could you have done this one by the shortcut to check your work? Not with the 2 in front. Okay? So let's review the shortcut. Let's do letter B from number 5. Do you notice anything on letter B that we talked about in your notes that could mess up? Yeah? You're missing a term. And if there's a missing term, do you remember you have to put a 0 in that spot? So I'm going to put right here. I need to have a plus 0x squared. Okay, there are no skips, not in long division, not in synthetic division. Okay? So when I'm dividing, I always put the opposite of what I'm dividing by in the box. So if it's a plus 1, what am I going to put in the box? Negative 1. And then remember, it's a shortcut, so I only want to put the numbers from the front, not the x's. So this is a 1x cubed. Then what would come next? A 0x squared. Then a minus 7x, then a minus 6. Okay, then remember, the arithmetic in the shortcut is you bring the first number down. So it's going to be a 1. then you times it by the box. So I'm gonna have a 1 right here times -1, what's that? 1 times -1 is -1, and then I add these guys together. What's 0 plus -1? Make sure you're adding, so 0 plus -1 is gonna give me -1. Okay, then I do -1 times -1, what's that gonna be? +1. And then remember, you're adding this column, so I'm gonna do -7 plus 1, what am I gonna get? -6, then what do I do with the -6? Times it by the box, -6 times -1 gives me +6. Which means that my last remainder number is gonna be how many? 0, very good. If your answer started as an x3, then your new answer will start as an x2, because you divided one of the x's out. So it's gonna be 1x2 minus 1x minus 6 plus a remainder of 0 over what you divided by. Now, when I box my answer, if your remainder is a 0, remember, you don't have to put that. Okay, I'm gonna put it just to remind you, that's what it would look like if it wasn't a 0. Okay, but not including a remainder 0 is totally. Okay, do we remember how to do that? A little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, turn to the last page, then we're gonna take a break and y'all are gonna do some on your own. The last page is all factoring. There are 4 types of factoring that you learned how to do. We're gonna start with perfect squares. Look through your answer or your questions. Tell me which ones, there are 2, can be worked by perfect squares. 8 and 9 is correct. Very good. Okay, so I'm gonna do 8 and then I'll let you do 9. Okay, what is the square root of 9x squared?
3.
Okay, so I'm gonna do 3x and 3x. What is the square root of 25? Plus or minus 5. And remember, you have to do one of each equal to 0. Okay, now we talked about this in your notes over the last 2 days. Okay, but if I have a big long equation equal to 0, do you remember how you can split it up? So I'm gonna let, and this, I'm gonna have to write much smaller. Okay, but it'll be 3x plus 5 equal to 0. And then 3x minus 5 equal to 0. And let's see how our answers are gonna come out. How do I get rid of, let's solve this one first. How do I get rid of a minus 5? Plus 5 on both sides. So I'll do plus 5 here and here. What is 0 plus 5? So I have 3x equals 5. From there, what do I do last? Divide the 3 out of the way, which means my answer comes out to 5/3. Now, let's talk about, remember how we had done that little shortcut? It still works, except for one thing. Okay, what's the opposite of minus 5? Positive 5. But then if there's a number in the front, you're just gonna make sure you divide it on your final answer. So it's kind of like divide and slide, you're just doing it backwards, okay? So now let's use that shortcut on this one. What's the opposite of plus 5? It's gonna go to a -5, and will that be my final answer? I'll need to divide it by what? 30, okay? So you're gonna break it into your factors first. And then you can either set each one equal to 0 and solve, or just remember the shortcut that we talked about. Okay, so number 9, I'm gonna also put is square roots. Okay, next one I'm looking for is gonna be one where I'll do the AC chart on. You have to have an A, a B, and a C. What numbers can I do the AC chart on? Pretty much all the boxes, right? So let's do number 14. Okay, label your ABC. And then remember, at the top of your chart, you want AC. Now remember, you're multiplying those together. So if my A is a 6 and my C is a -10, what's 6 times -10? -60, very good. Then in my calculator, if I don't want to have to come up with the list of factors myself, I'm gonna put y equals 60 over x. Okay, notice I'm not gonna put the negative because I'm gonna decide where I put the negative, right? So 60 over x, then second graph, I want only whole numbers, no decimals should make it into your chart. So we want to start at 1. Okay, I have 1 times 60, 2 times 30, 3 times 20, 4 times 15. Wow, this one has a lot. Okay, 5 times 12, 6 times 10. And then once I get to 6 and 10, do you see how everybody else has decimals? Until I get to what? 10 and 6. And once you hit your first repeat, you don't have to keep scrolling. Once you get to a repeat, you're done. Yes? Oh, sure, yeah. If you see the answer on your table, you don't have to write them all down for me on your test. Okay, from here, it's a negative at the top. That means I want to subtract to get b equals what? 17. Now, there's a pair in here that add to 17. Can I pick that? No, you have to follow the sign at the top of the chart. If it's a minus, you have to minus to get your basement number. So which of these pairs are gonna minus to give me 17?
3 and 20.
Okay, 3 and 20, very good. Okay, for 5 and 12 won't work. That's an addition and you have a subtraction table. Now, which one should I put the minus on if I want my 17 to come out to be a plus in the middle?
3.
The smaller number, which is the 3. So I have x minus 3 and x plus 20. If my A is a 1, I'm done. Is my A a 1? No, I'm gonna divide by 6. Okay, whatever your A is, that's what you divide by. Now, little question here. 3, can it divide evenly by 6? No, but it can reduce, but your calculator will do it for you. So let's see how to, or you can do this on your own if you know how to reduce. Hit second quit to get out of your table. Okay, second is here, quit's right next to it in blue. Okay, and then to pull up your pretty fraction, do you remember how to do that?
Alpha X.
I thought it was alpha. Oh, no, I'm wrong. It is alpha X?
Yes.
Alpha X. Oh, nice. I didn't even know that short. Wow. Okay, so alpha X, and then you're gonna put 3 over 6. And if it'll reduce, that counts as dividing. So 3 over 6 is gonna go to 1 over 2. Okay, then I'm gonna do 20 over 6. So we're gonna alpha X, 20 over 6. And what does that one come out to be? 10 over 3, right? Okay, then if it doesn't divide all the way, you just still slide the bottom number up. Okay, so how is my first factor going to be written? Slide it over. 2x minus 1. And how is this one going to be written when I slide it over? 3x plus 10. Okay. Now, if that equals 0, then I still want to write my final answers. Okay, but I want to show you a little hack. Okay, you know how you have to slide this to the side? But remember, when I write my final answer, what's going to happen? I'm going to take my -1, turn it to a what? And then where's the 2 going to end up? Back on the bottom where it was for your final answer. Okay, so what I like to think about is before you slide this over, just change the sign on that number. If it was a -0.5, your answer is going to come out to +0.5, just like it was with whole numbers. Okay. Then for this one, my +10 is going to turn to a what?
Minus 10.
-10, but then I'm going to put it over 3. Okay. Or if you want to do the little hack, you would just say, well, if it was a +10 over 3, I know my answer is going to come out to a minus. Okay. All right, so you should know how to do square roots in T-chart or AC chart. Okay, there's one other type of factoring on your page and it's GCF. There are two of them that have a GCF, but I want to do number 7. Okay, so look at number 7 for me, please. Okay, remember that a GCF can be a number or a letter or both. What does number 7 have in common? A 4 and X. An X. Very good. So I'm going to take my 4X to the front. What is left over from 12X squared when I divide it by 4X? 3X. Okay, 3X. And then from my 20X divided by 4X, what's 20 divided by 4? 5. Then from here, if you want to set it equal to 0, you can, but we learned a shortcut. When X is on the outside, what's the answer going to be? 0. And then when X is in a parentheses with a +5, how's my answer going to come out? If it's a +5, how's it going to come out? -5, but then I'm going to have to divide by 3. So it'll be X equals -5 divided by 3. And if you want to think about it as you're just sliding that 3 back down to the bottom and changing the sign, that's totally fine. Okay, last one, I want you to find the question that has a GCF on it. On this page. Hey, look at all your questions that are left. It is 13. What can all of those divide by? 3. Very good. So before you AC chart it, I want you to divide all of those through by 3. So what will your new 3x squared be now?
X squared.
A 1x squared. What about my 36 divided by 3? 12x. And then what about your 60 divided by 3? 20. And then you'll be able to ABC that as usual. Okay? All right, let me see on the back side. All right, so I'm gonna pause there with examples. So what I'd like you to do is run through all of the questions that we skipped. Okay, with the exception of number 10, you need a formula for. And so I just want you to cross that one out for right now. I'm gonna pull up the formula when we do the second half of here. Okay? So raise your hand if you need help. Okay, you're running through the first half of the review. Okay, actually, I just looked at your test and that formula is not on there. So we're gonna skip that one. So if you just want to cross out number 10, that one's not on your test. Okay, let's resume. We're just gonna do maybe like a couple more things and then you'll have the rest of class to work. So 17, your numbers in your chart, I'm not gonna do the whole thing. But it should have been A times C was what?
-36.
Uh-huh, and then we're gonna do 1 times 36. But then I wanna keep my B a positive 35, which means where am I gonna put the negative?
1.
On the 1, very good. Okay, from here, normally this is where you might have messed up. My numbers are 1 and 36. So I do x minus 1 and x plus 36. Okay, that part is a little bit wrong, but it's an easy fix. Okay, a lot of y'all said, how can I AC chart it? Because what's your power on x? It's not x2, it's x4. So when you split them evenly, do you remember you just give each parentheses a square? That's the only thing that's different. Now, if my A is a 1, I'm done. Is my A a 1?
Nope.
No, what is it?
4.
Then I have to divide and slide over 4. So 1 will not divide by 4, so I'm gonna slide it. It'll be 4x squared minus 1. And then my second parentheses, can 36 divide by 4?
Yes.
That's gonna be x squared plus 9. Okay, now from here, if either of these could break down more, you should do it. But we just covered this last class, that if your x squared is with a plus, what kind of answers come out? Imaginary, very good. Okay, so I'm not gonna show every step, but x squared with a plus is gonna give you imaginary solutions. And remember that those do not show up on your x-axis. Okay, versus for my other one, okay, I will get two answers. Let's see what they are. Okay, I'm gonna do 4x squared minus 1 equals 0. How do I get rid of the minus 1?
Plus 1.
Plus 1 across. 0 plus 1 is 1, so I have 4x squared equals 1. What do I do next to get rid of the 4?
Divide with.
Divide the 4, which means that x squared is 1 over 4. And then for my last step, how do I get rid of the squared? Take the
Square root.
square root. And remember, when you square root, what do you put in the front?
Plus or minus.
Plus or minus. So your answers come out to be x equals plus or minus the square root of 1 over 4. Okay? All right, so x squared plus, though, is always imaginary. If it's not x squared with a minus, you can skip all this stuff, okay? All right, what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna run through a couple more examples, okay? And then we're gonna be done. If you just came in, I'll put this back up here later, okay? So flip back over, please. Yes?
3, 5, 4.
Huh? You don't even have to find it, but it would be plus and minus 3. If you just put imaginary, that's good enough. Okay, come back to this page here. So we covered a lot of vocabulary. Okay, I think this was 2 classes ago. Let's just remember what each of these mean. If I want it to be increasing, I'm looking for my graph to be uphill. Remember that if you think about it like the cart thing, your cart has to start here and it has to go forward. So at the beginning, is my cart going uphill or downhill?
Downhill.
Okay, downhill till when? We'll just round this off. We'll just say -1, so it's not a decimal. Okay, then it's uphill till when?
2.
Till 2. Then it's downhill till when? Round it off.
4.
And then at 4, it starts going uphill again. So for those sections, your graph is increasing. We're going to say from -1 to 2. Union, to show that I have a second piece. And then from 4 all the way to the end of the graph would be infinity. The graph is going to be decreasing on each of those pieces I didn't highlight. So I would have the piece from 2 to 4. That was a little downhill part. And then the other downhill part would be this section. Where does it start if it goes to the left forever? Negative infinity, very good. So from negative infinity all the way till -1. Okay, remember you only need the union if you have multiple spots. Okay. Yes? The order does not matter. As long as you have 2, 4, and this, you could put them in either order, it doesn't matter. Okay, then local min and local max are just gonna be your high and your low points. Okay, so I have a local min here and here. and then I have a max here. Okay, so just think like tops and bottoms. Okay, you can just label them on the graph. Okay, now for the next part, you want f of x greater than 0, less than 0, and equal to 0. Let's review what that means. Greater than 0 means positive or negative, which one? Greater than 0 means positive, and those are going to be found above the x-axis. Okay, versus less than 0, that means negative. And we're going to find those pieces of the graph below the x-axis. But if I want it to be equal to 0, I don't want it to be above or below. I want it to cross the x-axis. So these are going to be your zeros or your x-intercepts. Okay, but that would be where it actually like touches the x-axis. Okay. So now let's go through and find those on your graph. Okay, if you remember when we did the notes, okay, I took out the ruler. When I want everything above, I cross out everything below. And I'm just looking for the pieces of the graph that are above. So I would want from this number to infinity and from this number to negative infinity. Yeah, these two pieces. Okay, so that would be from negative infinity to negative 3. Union. And then it goes above 5 to infinity. Okay, but those are the sections that are above the x-axis that it would be positive. Okay, below the x-axis, I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to hide everything on top. And I notice that my graph is below the x-axis all the way from negative 3 to 5. Okay, so from negative 3 to 5. Okay, also notice that we don't need a union because we don't have multiple sections. Okay, then for my last one, I want the x-intercepts. Where does my graph hit the x-axis? What numbers? Okay, negative 3, positive 2, positive 5. Negative 3, positive 2, positive 5. Okay, now before we keep going, let's skip to our equation because we just covered this last time. Okay, at the graph, look at your graph. Is negative 3 a pass or a bounce? You remember how to tell? Negative 3 is a pass if it goes through. It's a bounce if it just touches the x-axis. So what type is negative 3?
Pass.
It is a pass. Which other one is a pass? 5. And then what type is 3? Or 2 is that bounce. Very good. And remember that if it's a pass, it's a single root versus a bounce is a double root, which means we're going to list it as a squared term. Okay. So let's come down here to our equation and let's write it. If negative 3 is a 0, what would the parentheses need to say? If negative 3 is an answer, what would the parentheses need to say? X plus 3. That's right. And that was a single, so I don't put a square on it. Okay, then when I get to 2, what would the parentheses say for the answer to come out to be 2? Minus 2. Very good.
We write it twice.
So instead of writing it twice, I'm going to put a squared on it. But if you put it twice, that's the same thing. Okay, then 5 is an answer. What does the parentheses need to say? Minus 5. Very good. Okay, that would be a possible equation for the graph. Okay, right above that, how do I know if it's even or odd? Even, the ends point the same way. Odds, the ends point opposite ways. What is your graph doing? Are the ends the same or opposite?
Same.
So it's even. Okay, and then the last thing that it asks you to do, so I'm going to put same end behavior. Okay, remember that if it's odd, you'd have one arm up, one arm down. We don't see that here. Okay, last one is end behavior. Let's do it on our graph. Okay, if I want to do the right end, I'm going to say as x goes to what? Infinity is to the right. What is my end doing? It's pointed which way? So then y goes to infinity. And then if you want to write, that means the right end points up. Okay, take a look at the other end. If I want to be over here, what do I want x to be going towards? Negative infinity. And then what is that end also doing? Pointed which way? So then y goes to infinity as well. Okay, and then if you want to write this little sentence, I'm not going to, but that means the left end also points up. Okay. All right. I think you should pretty much be good. Maybe we'll just do one more off the next page. Will you do the first graph? And you're just writing the end behavior. So as x goes to infinity and as x goes to negative infinity. Remember, x to infinity is always the right side, negative infinity is always the left side. Then y tells you what that end is doing. Which way is this end going? So I put y to infinity versus what is this end doing? Down, so it'd be y to negative infinity. Okay? Now, this does not happen on your test, but if you check your work, you're gonna see it on the key. For this one, write as x to infinity and as x to negative infinity. Put it on each side. Okay, just like we would have before. X goes to infinity and x goes to minus infinity. Okay, what are both ends doing? They're both going straight. Well, they're going down, but do you see how they're straightening out? Okay, so what happens for this one is instead of your y going down to negative infinity forever, you would say that your y is just getting closer to zero. Okay, and notice that that happens on both ends. So instead of putting that your ends go down forever and ever and ever, they do go down forever and ever, but only as far as the x-axis goes. Is there one other graph that also does that? Yeah, this one right here. So what would my sentence say if I want to go to the left as x what? Negative infinity, then y goes to 0. But you would only put that if your graph is kind of flattening out, where instead of just like bolting it down, it's kind of like flattening. Okay? But that does not happen on your test. It'll happen in the next unit. Okay? So you have about 10 minutes. Look for the answer key on Schoology. Check your work. Test reviews for a grade. Your test is on Thursday. Okay? Ask me if you need any more help.
So the test is going to be all of these.
Yes. And then if you came in late, here's number 17.